Hey guys, and welcome to the Crochet Life of Sophie. I'm Sophie. Some of yours attention spans are quite short, so I'm going to be getting straight to the point. In today's video, we're going to be talking about all t-shirt yarn, specifically my opinion about t-shirt yarn. For someone who's made a lot of things using t-shirt yarn, I can fairly say that I do have an opinion that I'm just going to tell you my honest and open experience working with t-shirt yarn. And by the way, if you guys are interested in this bag, I do have a tutorial up on my channel on how to crochet a chunky bag, among other tutorials. I also do have a tutorial up on my channel on how you guys can actually make one of these bags, as well as this side bag, which is so easy to make. And I make these using t-shirt yarn, obviously. So first of all, it is eco-friendly. It is made using recycled materials such as fabric. So this is a good investment when you are all about sustainability, eco-friendly yarn that you want to keep using it and all that. My second favorite thing about t-shirt yarn or working with t-shirt yarn is that it is so quick to work up. For an example, this bag literally took me an hour or less than that to make up this bag. And if you guys can look at the details closely, I used 2 strands at the same time. So imagine using 2 strands of like yarn that's sturdy and thick. Obviously it's going to be so quick to work up. That's one thing I love about t-shirt yarn. And also another thing is the yarn is quite strong and sturdy. For projects such as bags, I've made like a number of tote bags using this yarn, and I did actually double the strands, but with other bags I didn't double the strands. And you don't necessarily have to double the strands because the yarn itself works up really fast. This is another sling bag which I really wanted to use when I was going out the other time, so it was so quick to make. So another thing is, in my area or where I live, the yarn is actually affordable. This is not even the full skein because I used some of it for a different project. So I also wanted to highlight that this yarn is actually quite affordable. So please do let me know where you're based, if this yarn is actually affordable or not. And you can also let me know how much it costs. Now that I've mentioned and highlighted that the yarn is so quick to work up, it is so strong, it is so steady, it is affordable where I live. Now we can move on to the disadvantages of working with this yarn, once again in my own personal opinion. What I don't like when it comes to working with this yarn definitely has to be the factory knots. I'm just gonna show you guys. This is a factory knot. So normally what I do when I get to it, I try to like pull it and see if it's gonna come out or not, if it's gonna come off or not. But I don't like the factory knots. I'm more of like, I'm not really like a perfectionist, but I'd really like it if the yarn was like close to being perfect with few factory knots. So normally if I'm not happy with how the knot is, I just like simply cut it and then make like my own knot and then just move on with life. Another thing that I don't like about working with this yarn specifically is that it doesn't come with different shades of colors. There's more of like a limited shades of colors. So for example, compared to acrylic yarn, which is actually one of the most popular yarns, as for example with pink, there's like 7 shades of pink. Meanwhile with t-shirt yarn, you could only find like 2 shades of pink, which is okay because once again it is made from recycled materials, recycled fabric, recycled t-shirts and all that. When it comes to t-shirt yarn is the fact that it comes in different sizes, shapes and forms. And what I mean by that is, let me show you real quick. This is a basket that I once again made using my t-shirt yarn, so I'm just gonna show you something really quick. That's one thing I don't like. It is so unpredictable. As you guys can see, it is very thin. This is the scrap yarn that I have for t-shirt yarn. As you guys can see, the yarn is very, very thin. Meanwhile, in this bowl, which is in the color brown, the yarn is actually, in terms of the width, the yarn is actually very thick. And here it's very thin. I'm just going to show you guys. Here it's very thin and here's very thick. That's one thing that I don't like when it comes to working with t-shirt yarn, because it is so unpredictable. So also like a big deal because it gives unreliable vibes, if that makes sense, because you could be wanting to work on a project and then you find that the cut on this specific t-shirt yarn is quite thick compared to the other one. So that means that you might have to size up or even size down when it comes to your crochet hooks. Another thing which I extremely dislike about working with t-shirt yarn is joint pains. It is so hard to work with at times, especially now that I double the strands. I'll just use this bag as an example. Obviously I use the colors pink and orange, so doubling the strands also can cause joint pains. For some odd reason I'm right-handed, so for some odd reason I'd be crocheting something, and then the following day when I wake up I've got pains here and even here. So I don't like working with this yarn all the time, and it is just weird. I don't want to say weird, but it's when I make videos about t-shirt yarns tutorials, they're actually one of the most viewed tutorials on my channel. So I guess sometimes I have to, and I do get a number of great compliments when it comes to the tote bags which I did make using t-shirt yarn. And please do let me know in the comment below whether if this yarn does bring you any joint pains or not. So another thing that I don't like when it comes to working with this yarn has to be the fact that the color can tend to come off. There's this bag which I made for my mom 2 years ago. I'll just like attach a picture. So there's this bag which I made for my mom a few years ago, and she was using it as a day-to-day work bag, and I made it using navy blue, and the time where it actually got washed, and the time it got washed, I'm not sure if they used the washing machine or like a really hard brush to wash the bag, the color came off, and unfortunately she couldn't use it. And then she's like, I should just undo it and make like, oh, I should just undo it and create a different project with it. And I thought, okay, maybe that's something that I can do. But yeah, that didn't stop me from continuing to buy like t-shirt yarn, because honestly I love tote bags that I make using t-shirt yarns. It's made from recycled fabrics, so the color can tend to come off. So I think another way to go about it when the color comes off from a project is that you can buy fabric dye. This is something that I've personally never tried, but I'm willing to try. So for example, with the bag which I made, because it was in the color navy blue, I could either buy like the navy blue fabric dye, and then just try to dye the project. I do not know. I don't know how I would go about it. As I was doing research about t-shirt yarn, just trying to understand whether if I was the only one having or experiencing these problems, others do suggest that maybe like more nude colors where the color are not going to be so quick to come off compared to dark colors, which will be your blacks, your navy blues, and even your reds, I guess. So that's just another thing that I don't like about t-shirt yarn. The color comes off. The yarn itself, it is so difficult to work with, and I do not think that it is beginner friendly. If I were a beginner crocheter and I picked up t-shirt yarn, I would honestly, personally would be discouraged from the get-go because it is so tough to work with. So the projects that you are gonna end up making with t-shirt yarn can tend to be heavy, especially now that once again I did double the strands. So the bag is heavy. It's not your normal lightweight bag that one could have made using your DK cotton yarn or acrylic yarn. The bag tends to be a little bit heavy, so sometimes it is hard for me to even carry all 4 bags, you know, trying to like do like a thumbnail, trying to take pictures for the thumbnails, because these bags or these projects made using t-shirt yarns can tend to be a little bit heavy. Another thing which I'd like to highlight is that the yarn itself is a little bit stretchy. So this could either be a good thing or a bad thing. But I do know that with these projects, for example, when I make the handles for the bag, I know that over time the bag itself might stretch, but it's gonna take time, or it might take time, but eventually the bag might stretch, because once again the yarn itself, it's stretchy. So that's also one thing you need to bear in mind when you are making a project. So this could either be a good thing or a bad thing. So I'm just gonna give you my advice when it comes to working with t-shirt yarn. I'm not sure where you guys get your t-shirt yarn or how it looks when you guys buy it, but this is my top tip when it comes to working with t-shirt yarn. How can you disappoint me? I'm trying to do like a fancy cool center pull. So when it comes to working with t-shirt yarn, the first thing I advise you guys, it depends, once again this depends on the yarn that you guys get or buy, is to stretch the yarn, the t-shirt yarn, before you actually use it. I think this just makes it a little bit loose and all nice. And another thing that you can do is wrap it into nice balls. You don't necessarily need to have a yarn winder in order for you to wrap the t-shirt yarn nicely. Even with the yarn winder, it's not gonna properly wind up the yarn nicely. I did try this some days ago and I don't like how it looks, so excuse the mess, but I did use a yarn winder to wind this yarn, and obviously I'm not happy with it. And here I used my hand to wind it up nicely into like a small ball, which is the method that I prefer when it comes to winding up yarn. So I think I'd rather wind it up nicely into a ball than using the yarn winder, because this is way too thick to be winded up by a yarn winder itself. So here's another example. I always wind up my t-shirt yarn into a nice ball using my hands. If you do decide to do this, this is just gonna help you see the factory knots that may be there, any inconsistencies in the yarn, so that you can decide to like cut it and connect it again, because the yarn, obviously it could be thick at the beginning or at the top, and then in the middle of the skein it becomes very thin and then goes back to being thick again. So if you do decide to wind it up nicely, this would be that the yarn can be all nice and neat and tidy. Another thing would be to, in order for you to determine any inconsistencies that may be there before you start working with the yarn itself, so that when you start working with this yarn, you can know that you've already went through this, you've already checked it, it looks proper and it is good and ready to work with. Another way to best go about this is to have a look at the yarn label, and then it's going to tell you which crochet hook or knitting needles that is recommended to be used with that specific yarn. Because t-shirt yarn comes in various sizes, you can even use like a 6mm crochet hook for a very thin yarn. You can use like a 15mm crochet hook for 2 strands at the same time, which is normally what I use. Either 12mm crochet hook or 15mm crochet hooks when I double up my strands. The thing is, when you're working with the t-shirt yarn, either you're knitting or crocheting. I can't specifically talk about knitting because I've personally never knitted with this yarn before, but only crocheted. Is that hold your crochet hook nicely and the yarn loosely so that you're able to crochet properly and you don't cause any hand strains on yourself. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this already, but normally when I'm crocheting with t-shirt yarn, because it can tend to cause joint pains, is that I always take breaks. It's very important for me to take breaks while I'm working up with the yarn. As much as the yarn is so quick to work up with, it is very important for me to stretch my hands and take breaks, because if I do not, I don't want to suffer from any severe or permanent joint pains, because I love crocheting and I want to do this for the rest of my life. But other than that, I don't only use my hands for crocheting, I also do use them for other things. So it is important that you look after your hands. Now we've gotten to the last part of the video, which now I'll be tackling some of the ideas that you guys can make using t-shirt yarn. I'd say crochet rugs, crochet bags, specifically tote bags or whatever bags your heart desires. You can even make placements, even coasters, or even something for your pets. Like anything is possible with t-shirt yarn. And also do remember to take breaks while you're working with the yarn. Before I close off, I'd like to know if you've got any questions related to this video or crochet in general. Please do ask me down in the comment section below. I'm more than happy to help. And if you've got any advice, tips and tricks on working with t-shirt yarn, I'd love to hear from you. And also what your experience working with t-shirt yarn has been. And also, will you work with t-shirt yarn, or you'll never work with t-shirt yarn? I'd love to know. Tell me all about it down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and please always remember to be kind.